Slash attacks are when a thief will try to cut into your backpack to get into its contents. I've made a couple of different videos on how you can prevent those kind of attacks, but a lot of you have been asking me, does the actual material your backpack is made of make any difference? Well, I decided to get the most popular materials that backpacks are made of and put them to the test. Hi everybody, foXnoMad here, and today I want to help you travel smarter by putting a couple of popular backpack materials to the slash test to see whether or not you can cut through them and whether the material makes any difference. Now, although it doesn't sound like it, slash attacks actually are pretty stealthy attacks. The most common method is a thief cutting through your backpack that's under a bus seat. They're sitting behind you, cutting through your bag without you noticing until they've long made off with your stuff. Slash attacks can also happen when you're walking around a busy part of town or a crowded tourist area and there's just enough commotion where you wouldn't notice it until it's too late. Slash attacks can target the exterior of your backpack or the straps, which is more common when a thief is targeting a purse, for example. Now, there are a lot of materials that backpacks are made of, but two of the most common fabrics are nylon and polyester. Nylon is one of the strongest fabrics you can get in a backpack, but is relatively heavy and not waterproof. Polyester, on the other hand, is lighter but often waterproof. These fabrics are measured in denier, which is the weight of a single strand. On the most rugged backpacks, 1000 denier nylon is used, but 500 denier nylon and other fabrics are also common in many backpacks. So I've got here three different fabrics. I've got 500 denier nylon, I've got 1000 denier nylon, and I've also got polyester canvas. And not to mention, two sharp knives to see how well these fabrics do to stabbing and slashing, and see whether or not it makes any difference what your backpack material is actually made of. I'm going to do a couple of different tests. The first is to try to cut through the fabric with a medium to hard surface behind it, in this case cardboard, and then something softer like bubble wrap to simulate the different kinds of gear that you might be packing. Then I'll follow up with the stab test to see if I can puncture the fabric with a forceful push. Alright, so let's start with 500 denier nylon, which is a pretty rugged material, and 500 denier is not too thick, but it's not too thin either. So let's see how well this does. I've got two knives here. I've got a smaller knife and a bigger knife. Although in most slash attacks, the thief is going to be using a box cutter or something like this. Probably not something like this, but we're going to put these to the test. Let's go all out. So let's first just try to cut at it with something like cardboard behind it. So I'm going to take out just a little bit of the material here, unfold it. And you can see when I do that, it's not really thick. So the material isn't super thick. It's pretty thin actually, and it looks like it should cut easily, but we're gonna find out. So I'm just gonna take some of this cardboard here and put it behind the material so it has something to go against, and that way we can find out, give it some resistance. So there we go. We've got a little bit of cardboard on the back just to push back a little bit, and a little bit of the material on the front, the nylon on the front. Like I said, it's not too thick. All right, so let's go with the first slash test with this knife. Now we're just gonna try to cut through it. It's got a nice noise to it. It's got a sound to it. So, that might not be absolute theft protection, but it's definitely loud. So let's try cutting against the grain here. Again, same noise. I'm gonna try to cut just across like that. Alright, so I've done a pretty decent job of trying to cut at this fabric using the sharp end of the blade. And I've got something hard behind it there, so the cardboard. And it's pretty solid. I mean, pulling at it, it's not tearing at all. And if I look at the back, you do see a little bit of the marks from the knife, just where the knife went through the little lines, but it doesn't look like the fabric is really being, structurally damaged there. So it's holding up pretty well. Let's just go like that. Let's see. And that fabric, man, that is doing a really good job. I mean, you can see a little bit where it's kind of just like peeled up a little bit, and I'm cutting through the fabric, but yeah, it's doing a pretty good job of not getting cut. I try to tear through it. It's weakened a little bit. No. So let's now go with the larger knife, which maybe has a little bit more cutting power to it. Let's try to really cut into it here. There we go. So if I pull this apart, oh yeah, 500D nylon is got, there you go. That's your slash attack right there. Look, you can see that it went right through the fabric. So 500D didn't hold up well to the big knife. Okay, not great, but it did hold up really well to this smaller knife, which is maybe a little less sharp. But if I really just cut at it, it does a pretty good job. All right, so that's 500D nylon. Now let's put something a little bit softer behind it and see how well it does against that. All right, so now we've got a softer material behind here. Let's try to cut through. Oh yeah, that not much difference there. In fact, I would say the knife is not doing as well, which kind of makes sense because there isn't as much force behind the fabric, so there's a lot more to give and it doesn't really cut through very well. I'm gonna guess though, for the puncture test, softer is maybe gonna work better, but we'll see. All right, so now let's go with the bigger knife, see how well it does. It's not doing any better than the smaller knife. So this knife, which is larger and a little bit sharper, something softer behind it, it's just not able to cut through the material. Again, you do have these track marks here, you do have the lines here which are from the knife, but the fabric is still holding up pretty well. And I think at this point we can say that, look, if somebody's going through that much effort to try to cut through your stuff and they're not, you know, being successful, they've got to cut that much, you're gonna notice. So it's probably not the best tack. So I would say that 500D nylon is doing a pretty good job of surviving getting cut through, at least with the smaller knives, and a fairly decent job. Really had to put a lot of force to cut through it with this larger, sharper knife. So I'd say, you know, nylon is looking pretty good. Now let's try to stab it. So I'm gonna put this cardboard behind here like this. Remove this for a minute and let's try to just stab at it. So I'm gonna take this, I'm literally just gonna try to puncture through. And see if there's any light coming through those punctures. And let me get a close-up of this. And no, the nylon is holding up pretty well. The little sort of marks in between the fabric and the strands are normal. That's what was there before. So I wasn't able to puncture it with the smaller knife. Let's try it now with this larger knife and heavier knife. Yeah, that's getting through. You can see that right there. That is getting through the fabric. So you can see that the larger knife was able to cut through the strands. So it was able to puncture. There are these small holes here, but it does. Yeah, it's gonna cut through. But again, I'm using a lot of force. This isn't really a stealthy attack. I'm guessing a thief is probably gonna try to cut through here as quietly as they can. And this is a pretty sharp knife. So even with a box cutter, I don't think if they're not making traction right away, they're probably just going to give up. So it looks like 500D nylon provides a good amount of protection, a decent amount of protection. I think it does a pretty good job. So now that we know that nylon is pretty effective, see all the stab holes right there. Let's try polyester. Let's go with a completely different fabric and just see how well it does. All right, so we've got this fabric here, and then on the back, like I said, a little bit shinier, sort of the waterproofing there. Smells a little bit, or a lot more like plastic than the nylon does. So let's put it to the cut test. Honestly, this stuff is so light. Even though it's about the same thickness, I'm guessing it's gonna get cut through pretty easily, but hey, maybe I'm wrong. Let's try it out. All right, so we're gonna start with small knife. We're gonna just try to cut through here, and it's getting damaged more easily. You kind of see it's cutting through the strands a little bit. I just noticed there were small holes, and there you go, cut right through it. Now that knife, this smaller knife, didn't have much of an effect, didn't cut through the 500D nylon, but the polyester canvas, yeah, it cut through that with not much effort. So, all right, so now let's try with the larger knife. I think we can all guess what's gonna happen here, but let's give it a shot. Let's see if this does any better. So I'm just gonna take this, I'm just gonna start cutting through here, and let's see. I didn't give it as much of effort as I did on the last one, and yeah, cut through that pretty easy. See? And once the thief gets through here, they're just gonna be able to get, you know, right through your stuff. So yeah, not surprising perhaps how light this material is, that it gets cut through so easily. But let's try with something a little bit softer behind it. Maybe that's gonna give it a little bit more protection. That's gonna give the fabric a little bit more sort of give to it. Let's go with like 5 cuts, right? Slashes. 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah. So you can see it didn't cut through immediately, but it just made enough of a damage that I was able to just easily just pull this apart. So it doesn't really seem to matter whether you've got some books in there or you've got some clothes. It looks like it's going to cut through. Let's try with the larger knife now. And I think none of us will be surprised that, yeah, able to cut through. It did take a little bit more work with the larger knife for some reason, but still able to get through the material. So you can kind of see that hole there. All right, so last test, puncture test. Let's go some cardboard back here. Let's just try to stab this material and see how it does. So you can see that goes right through. It's a really tiny hole, but it's there. So with the larger knife, you can get a little bit of a bigger hole, I'm guessing. Went right through, so you can easily just stab that material, see? And let's go with the smaller knife, which I have now. Seems like it's dented, but yeah, it just goes through really, really easily. Now, I'm gonna go back to the nylon. Let's try to just hold it up and stab it and see what happens. See if it really is making a difference. So, got our nylon. All right, I was able to cut through there. Hold up with the larger knife, and yeah, it does cut through. I mean, obviously you can see that, but it takes a lot more force. I'm actually having to push the knife a lot more, and I feel like if you were wearing that backpack, you would certainly notice that. I think that, you know, the difference between cutting through the polyester and cutting through the nylon is pretty noticeable, at least to me, and I'm guessing it would be to a thief. And now let's go with the heaviest of all the materials, the thickest, sort of the standard when it comes to rugged backpacks. You see 1000 denier nylon on a backpack, you know it's tough. Some of the stronger and thicker backpacks are like 1200. Again, really heavy. You can kind of feel that in the material. So if you've got a backpack with this material made of 1000D nylon, it's going to be heavier. But is it going to give you more protection? Let us find out. Feels thicker. It doesn't look thicker maybe to the eye, but it does feel thicker. So you kind of feel strands. Let's try to cut through this bad boy. Oh, I think this is not going to go well for the knife. All right, you can see kind of there's a little bit of sort of cuts through some of the individual strands, but there is no damage to this. I mean, I would have to be cutting with this small knife for quite a while to get through this material. So I think, yeah, definitely, obviously, not surprising, doing a much better job than the 500D nylon and certainly than the polyester. Let's go with the big knife and see how well it does there. All right, time to bring out the big boy. I'll just try to really put some force into it to cut through with the sharpest part of the blade, and there we go. Was able to cut through the material, but this is something interesting. It's really hard to rip through from this point. So I think somebody trying to do a slash attack on 1000D nylon would have to like cut through a long section of your backpack to be able to get into its contents. It's not going to be easily tearable, so it's not going to be easy to, you know, tear open. So it's probably lose a lot of stealth in that way, and you really just have to like kind of cut a massive hole in here. And I think a thief might be reluctant to do that. If you're walking around, it's going to be very difficult. If you're on a bus, maybe a little bit easier, but again, it would be a lot of effort, a lot of noise, and somebody might notice them, so they might just give up but you might see an attempt like this, but yeah, it's held up pretty well. I'm surprised it cut through, but imagine you've got 1000D nylon and you've got it, you know, layered like this on top of it. So you've got 2 layers of it, which, you know, could add some extra protection. Your backpack might have that, so it might be a little bit thicker, and then getting through this is going to be very, very difficult. So now let's try it with something a little bit softer behind it, see if that makes a difference. Get rid of the cardboard and try to cut through here with our smaller knife. I don't think it's going to do any better. And yeah, it's barely having an effect. I mean, this is really just not even damaging it. I don't think this is just not a viable attack for somebody. So the material in this case is making a difference. If we go with the thicker blade, cut through, you know, just like 5-10 seconds, see what happens. Yeah, even the marks between the smaller knife and the sharper, bigger knife, just really, with something a little bit softer there, you know, it's going to be really difficult to cut through this material. All right, so now it's time, I think, for the puncture test, right? Let's take our cardboard and let's see if we can stab through. Really give it a stab. And nothing. All right, let's go with the bigger knife, see what happens there. And it is going through. So the sharper knife is going through, but it's cutting these small holes. I'm guessing if we just... It does cut through, but I'm having to use a lot of force, and I'm holding the top of the fabric here with my other hand. So in a backpack, nobody's gonna really have that kind of leverage. So looks like 1000D nylon. Yeah, it can be stabbed, but it's gonna be really difficult to cut through, I think, at least stealthily. And I'm guessing that this kind of material is gonna give you some protection. So the answer, perhaps not surprisingly, is nylon does the best. If you want the strongest material that's going to protect your backpack and its contents, and you're worried about things like slash attacks, then the material does make a difference. Nylon is heavier, it doesn't give you waterproofing, but it is giving you a lot more protection, especially from somebody just trying to cut through the bag. I think that makes a big difference. Also, the straps are important, the material the straps are made of, so someone cutting through a backpack strap underneath to try to get it off of you is also another attack. So the material that's made of makes a difference. But I think if you're using a canvas bag or a polyester canvas bag, I think that the protection that it provides you is not great when it comes to slash attacks. So depending on where in the world you're traveling, what kind of traveling you're doing, whether you're riding on a bus, you might just want to be more mindful of where you put your belongings. Or if you're traveling, you know, if you're walking around in a large crowded area outside, maybe have your backpack on your front so that you can see it, so nobody can really cut through it easily. So I think these tests have shown us a couple of things. One is that nylon is generally more durable than polyester, and 1000D nylon, so the denier does make a difference. 500D was easier to cut through than 1000D, but those both are still going to be better compared to polyester when it comes to slash attacks. Now, nylon is heavier and not waterproof like polyester canvas, so that's a trade-off that you're going to have to make depending on where in the world you're going and what your goals are. But if slash attacks are something that you are worried about, then you're better off going with nylon, ideally something with a higher denier count, so something with 1000, maybe 1200, that's going to give you more protection. But if you want something lighter like polyester canvas, then maybe you just want to be more mindful when you're in public places. So maybe have your backpack in front of you when you're in crowded, you know, touristic areas. You're worried about slash attacks. When you ride a bus with both types of backpacks, you should keep it on your lap so that it's always in front of you. You always know what's going on and somebody can't stealthily try to cut through your bag and steal its contents. I hope this video has been helpful for you. Like I said in the beginning of the video, I've made a couple of videos on how you can avoid these kind of slash attacks, as well as other backpack security system tricks that you can use. I'll leave a link to those in the description below. And while you're down there, hit the like and subscribe buttons. I'll have new videos for you every week, and I'll see you in the next video. Oh, and if you have any other suggestions for types of videos or tests that you want me to do when it comes to pickpocketing or security, also let me know down in the comments. I'll be checking those out and replying. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.